I had been drinking alcohol at a pool hall underage with a girlfriend of mine. And before long, I ended up in the bathroom. She told me that they had put something on the back of the toilet that was going to get me right and I was going to feel better. As soon as I tried what they gave me, I instantly started to feel my face just go numb. And then before very long, I was being pulled down through my body. I didn't see a white light. It was just like I was slowly falling through the tub. I didn't feel any sense of hell. I just felt separated from my body and in a place of complete darkness. I was 17 at the time of my near-death experience, and I didn't know that's what it was called at that time. I had been drinking alcohol at a pool hall underage with a girlfriend of mine, and we were getting fed alcohol by some older guys we had began to play pool with. There was a couple of 22, 23, and a 25-year-old. And before long, I ended up in the bathroom just totally drunk, and I needed to sober up. I was spinning, and my girlfriend said, "The guys are trying to get you to come back out." And I said, "No, I don't feel up to it." And they said, "Don't worry, we'll get her right." So my girlfriend had convinced me that we should leave, and they didn't want to see a drunk underage girl leaving the pool hall. So my girlfriend put her arm around me, and the other guy put an arm around me, and we got out to the car. We drove to about 2 miles away, and they ended up having a hotel room. I ended up going into the hotel room with them because we were going to get right, and my girlfriend decided to make an ice cold bath. She said, "If you just get in the cold bath, you can sober up. You're being a baby. You're going to ruin this for everybody." She told me that they had put something on the back of the toilet that was going to get me right and I was going to feel better. So I didn't think much about it. I went ahead and got undressed for the bath and did what I needed to do. As soon as I tried what they gave me, I instantly started to feel my face just go numb. It's like my whole nose started to just explode, and I started bleeding from both nostrils. And I thought, this is terrifying. But at the time, my mind was beginning to get numbed out as well. So I was starting to feel euphoric at the same time. I just said, you know what, I just need to get in the bath. So I took a rag, put it to my nose, sat down in the bath. And as soon as I sat down, I just let that cold water come over me. I started to get really, really numb. And that was kind of almost the last thing that I remember. And then before very long, I feel like I was sinking backwards in the tub. I was being pulled almost downward through. My body was right here, but I was being pulled down through my body. I didn't see a white light. It was just like I was slowly falling through the tub, almost like I could feel every element that I was passing through. I didn't feel any sense of hell. I just felt separated from my body and in a place of complete darkness. I knew that it was so dark I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I felt like I was in this place of darkness for what felt like weeks. There's no time there. It's very hard to give a consistent measurement because with time, there's something passing, there's something changing, but in this space of nothingness, there was no time. I couldn't tell how long I was there. It felt like a very long time, but I didn't feel any torment or torture. I just felt completely separated from God and that I had deserved this. And I just do remember thinking that I don't have a purpose here. I don't know what I'm even doing here on this planet. I have nobody that's gonna miss me, nobody really that's gonna love me, except I had this wonderful grandmother. My dad's mother had always, my only grandchild that survived, and she really loved me. And I remember thinking this when I was down there. She'd always sing to me, and I remember going to an Awanas program she put me in when I was about 10 years old on Wednesday nights. And they always sang to me, "Jesus loves me, this I know." So I started thinking that if he saves people, maybe he'll save me. And I started to just sing within my own spirit, "Jesus loves me, this I know." And no sooner did I begin to think that than I started literally immediately going up. And it's not a sense that there was anything around me. It was within my own spirit. I was moving upward. As I was singing it, I was lifting myself as my mindset came up, and I remembered that I was already loved. It's like I had forgotten that I was separate from it in that place of darkness. So I began to come up, and as I went right back through the same way that I went down, I came back to the tub and I was slightly to the right. I went up above my body like 2 levels is what I always kind of say. It's as if I was going up above the ceiling of a room, but there was no ceiling, and I could look down to the left and I saw my body there. And I remember thinking, I don't want to die like this. I'm thinking about this, and no sooner did I think about this, I have a guide directly to my right. And it was somebody that I knew, because there was a familiarity in my spirit. And I say he, and he was so bright, I really couldn't see the face of this person, but I could make out everything about the image, just not the face, was just so bright. He said, kind of like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know." And as we were talking, there was a familiarity to what he was saying to me, and I don't remember every single word of what was said, but I do remember mostly he was saying, "You're not supposed to be here yet. You're not supposed to be here." And then when me and my guide went up a little more, we were in a beautiful, it was almost like I could see a park in front of me, a beautiful park. And we began to walk into this area. It was just green and colorful. Everything in this place was just so beautiful. It was the most vibrant colors, and the joy. The further I went away from my body, the more joy I felt, the more... It's not a joy that you could describe in this life, because you are it. You become it. Everything that you are around, you really become that. And you actually can interact with anything as you think it. You're one with it. I remember the grass had a consciousness. When I looked at the flowers on the right and the left, there was a consciousness to it. It looked like Square Park, and there were benches everywhere around this park. But there were trees behind that and levels. And to the front of me, I remember that I couldn't see clearly, very distantly. I could see that there was like crystal spires, almost like a crystal city, the top of these spires of like cathedrals or buildings, but they were over the hill where I was at. And it was almost like a wave when there's heat on the road and it comes up. It was like that, where I just couldn't see into that. But I do remember my guide specifically asking me, "Do you want to go back? It's not your time." And I said to my guide, "No, I don't want to go back. I absolutely don't want to go back, because I have no purpose." Before we were into the park, I'm standing here, and I remember him opening this, like almost a folder with contracts, but they were basically just agreements I had made in my soul with people before I came here. And some of them were for my benefit and some of them were for theirs. But I remember he didn't force me, but he showed me these contracts, and I could see it going this way diagonally. I wouldn't say to infinity, but there was a number of contracts, hundreds and hundreds, that I could see. And each one of them, the person was there, and in the middle, I was here, and we were doing something, and the contracts were so small. I remember just watching these contracts, and he explained to me that if I were to stay, which means I would have let this overdose take my life away from me permanently, I would have broken these contracts. I just remember him saying, "If you don't want these contracts, it's okay." You know, basically God would understand, the universe would reroute itself to accommodate these people, but they'd have to go to, every one of them would have to have secondary or tertiary, third contracts to fulfill it. So if I didn't show up at that date and that time, then someone else would have to show up the day before or the day after. And I thought to myself, I don't want to go back, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And he said to me, "Sunshine, you do know, but it's not time yet. But I remember him telling me, well, how will I know what it is? And he said, you'll know because we programmed your voice. Those that need to find you will find you because of your voice. I didn't have any awareness of my body anymore. The I part of me wasn't there. I was still myself, but I was my expanded self. I was who I was, but at any time I could reach out and it's like I could merge with whoever or whatever. I remember that I made my decision not for myself. That was one thing I do remember, is it was my decision to come back, but I had done it based on the idea that what I had to offer was of value to the people around me, and that I had known these people. I didn't know how, but I had made a contract. What a small, seems like insignificant thing, but to know that our souls are so mapped out. Not that we can't choose it, we absolutely do choose it, but that there's so much time and energy, there's so much care and thought that goes into our pre-planning of our life, the blueprints. I didn't have the life review like other people do. I didn't see my whole life flash before my eyes. No, I didn't have that. I was just taken up and shown. If I had probably crossed over deeper, I would have had that soul review, but where I was at was like the entry point. When I died, I was more sober and alive than I had ever been. He said, CUAD. And I remember thinking, all right, CUAD. And no sooner did I think that, than I was right back. I didn't feel pulled. I felt immediately reconnected, like just straight into the body and straight. You come into the body. When I left, I felt like I went through the spine down. But when I came back in, I felt as if I went through the mouth or through the top of the head back into the body. And I could feel the water was cold, ice cold. That's the one thing I felt instantly. I didn't have pain, but I had an awareness that I didn't fit. It's almost like your soul is so big, it doesn't want to fit in the body. And when it goes out of body, it's hard to keep coming back. It's hard to stay in the body. But I was grateful when I woke up from it. I realized I still had that whooshy feeling of almost like coming back into the body and still being a bit high, but still very sober. And I immediately tried to get myself out of the tub, and without even barely drying off, I was just trying to pull my clothes on and scream for my girlfriend, and she came in and I said, oh my God, I just died. Don't do this. I just died. And she goes, man, you're really high. I remember thinking this whole thing. I'm telling her, don't use this. You don't understand. I just died and my heart stopped. And it wasn't like I was completely out of it. I just had a sensation my body was not right. And I remember just trying to pull my clothes on. My body was ice cold. My lips were like almost blue. I was just pale more than I am. I was pretty out of it as far as not understanding what had happened to me. I walked about a block down the road, called in a payphone. This was in the late 1990s. Called in a payphone and got my aunt to come pick me up from Buena Park. I had just started taking missionary lessons from the Mormon church, and I went to them and tried to explain what happened to me. They just said it was an act of God that I was rescued. I believe that 100%. But I kind of tried to go into it more in my near-death experience with pastors and bishops of the church, and they really kept attributing everything that I went through to drugs, and I really rejected that theory because I understood I was completely sober, out of the body, and the decisions I made were made of consciousness. I knew what I was doing at that time, and it was really hard for that first year and a half. You would think I went straight, but that's not what happened. I felt very disillusioned and angry. I thought when I came back, everything would change. My family, me, my friends, my situation, none of it changed. It was just as hard as before I left. My family didn't instantly change. My circumstance didn't instantly change. My struggles were the same, except now I was a little more depressed because I knew what there was on the other side, and I knew how great it was. And I knew I needed to finish this But then as I was sitting with that, it took me about a year to process that. And in that time, I went through anxiety and depression quite a lot. But I always had a sense that I was never alone again. And that did help me to move through it a lot easier. And I ended up getting a scholarship about 15 months after this happened. I got a scholarship to a university. And I ended up getting a full ride scholarship, and then they gave me a job at the cafeteria and they gave me free housing, and I knew that I was being divinely guided at that time. And I had asked, I said, I can't do this, you've got to help me. And I remember just feeling that same presence of that guide being with me, and knowing that no matter where I went in this life, this journey would be guided, even if I wasn't sure how I was being guided, that I was never alone. That's something I brought back, that we're never alone, no matter how alone we feel. One message that I have for everybody is that death is an illusion. I realize now that, we are not the body. We are a spirit inside of a body. And that spirit cannot be harmed by death, but that body has an ego, and the egoic mind, that chatter, that constant worry, that anxiety, that confusion, that does die with the body. That's one thing I do know, is that fear, that compulsion, that worry, that stress, the things we put on ourselves, the inner dialogue, it's the ego. And the ego does die with the body, and that's why it's so afraid of death, and that's why it makes you paranoid and anxious and worried. But in spirit, you're whole, healthy, and complete. We all are. I saw people of all faiths, and there was love. It was the universal love and consciousness of God drawing everyone back to Him. And I do know that we are not alone, that no matter how alone you feel, it is an illusion. And the only way for us to experience this world, this is the second earth. There's 2 earths to incarnate on. I do remember that. And this is the hardest because we're separated from all of our spiritual abilities. Our telepathy, our connection with God is, disguised, and our connection to each other is buffered through the ego, so we can't really feel what each other's feeling. And we forget that we're connected to God, and we're all connected to Source, and we're never alone, and death is an illusion.